All right, so are you ready to dive deep into this world of like spiritual awakening and mediumship?
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it.
Today we're going to be talking about this guy named Vic who calls himself a spiritual master and a priest.
Okay.
And he has some really interesting thoughts about his own journey and the potential pitfalls that people can encounter when they're on this path of spiritual growth.
Right.
And what we're going to be looking at is this audio interview
Okay.
that he did in Portuguese with an interviewer, and we're just gonna kind of like pull out some of the key takeaways.
Sounds good.
What makes this deep dive, I think, particularly interesting is that Vic doesn't kind of shy away from the like complexities or challenges.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he provides a perspective that goes beyond the typical everything is love and light
Absolutely.
kind of narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he kind of goes right into it too, talking about like seeing, um, strange things like right from when he was a kid.
Yeah, like 7 years old.
Yeah.
Seeing elongated, faceless figures wandering around his house.
That's pretty wild.
Imagine that.
I mean, like, what do you even do with that, right?
Right. Yeah. And he's like, I don't know what these things were. I thought maybe they were connected to some kind of predestined spiritual path, or maybe they were like energetic guardians.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just fascinating how these early experiences seem to have really shaped his understanding of the spiritual realm.
Right.
It's like he was being kind of nudged toward this path.
Yeah, it was his destiny or something, right?
Yeah.
Like he had to go this way. Yeah, but what I find particularly interesting is how he connects these early encounters to this concept he calls Dharma,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a blueprint for your soul's journey.
He describes it as this predetermined path, and this path, he emphasizes is not always smooth sailing.
Right.
He even compares it to Crowley's concept of thelema,
Oh, interesting.
which emphasizes willpower and finding your true purpose, even if it means going against societal norms.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting, right?
Right.
Because Vic believes that these challenges and these bumps in the road are actually essential for spiritual growth.
Yeah. It makes sense, I guess, if
Yeah.
you think about it that way.
And he even uses, kind of a powerful analogy comparing this process to the expansion of the mind. Once the mind expands, it can't go back to its original size.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Kind of like that famous Einstein quote.
Yeah. When the mind expands, it cannot return to its original size.
Yeah. So, and he goes on to say, like, the bullying that he experienced as a kid, as painful as it was
Yeah.
actually a part of his dharma,
Oh, wow.
contributing to his spiritual development.
That's a pretty radical way of looking at it,
Yeah, it really challenges the conventional view of suffering as something to be avoided
Yeah.
at all costs.
Oh.
But Vic takes it a step further,
Oh, really?
arguing that chaos and suffering are not only inevitable, but actually necessary for growth, both on a personal and a collective level.
Okay.
He even draws parallels to Nietzsche's concept of the Superman.
Oh, interesting.
This idea of like transcending our limitations and embracing the challenges that lead to, greater strength and wisdom.
Okay.
And then to really kind of blow your mind, he brings in this example of World War II.
Oh, wow.
Obviously a horrific event.
Of course, yeah.
But he suggests that like the chaos of the war ultimately led to the development of the internet,
Okay.
which has obviously revolutionized our world
Yeah, that's true.
in countless ways.
For sure.
It's like even the darkest times can give birth to incredible progress.
Right, right. I think it's important to remember, though, that he's not condoning suffering or suggesting that we should seek it out.
No.
He's more kind of inviting us to reframe our perspective on challenges,
Right.
to see them as these potential catalysts for growth and transformation.
Okay, so we've got this idea of dharma, this predestined path
Yeah,
filled with necessary challenges.
right. We've got this concept of chaos as a catalyst for growth.
Okay.
But where does the whole mediumship aspect kind of fit into all of this?
Well, this is where I think Vic really gets serious, right?
Yeah.
He issues this really strong warning about the potential dangers of like diving into things like astral projection and mediumship without proper guidance and preparation.
Yeah. He uses this really stark analogy.
Oh, really? What's that?
He says the astral world isn't a fairyland where you're protected by universal forces.
Right. So it's not all just like fluffy bunnies and rainbows out there.
No, it's not like unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
He's basically saying that, like, the spiritual realm, while fascinating and potentially transformative,
Yeah.
can also be a bit like the Wild West.
Oh,
You
yeah.
need to know what you're doing, or you could get into some serious trouble.
Yeah, and he really stresses that it's crucial to approach these practices with respect,
Yeah.
with discernment, and, with a deep understanding of the potential risks. Right, yeah, and it's not about simply chasing mystical experiences.
Right.
It's about engaging in this process of self-discovery
Yeah.
and spiritual growth with awareness and responsibility.
That makes sense.
So for anyone listening who might be interested in exploring these realms, what are some practical steps they can take to ensure a safe and meaningful journey?
Well, that's a really good question.
Yeah,
And it's definitely one that we'll be addressing, as we go deeper into Vic's interview.
right.
But before we get into the practicalities, I think it's worth noting that Vic's perspective is, deeply rooted in this philosophical framework known as theosophy.
Right. He mentions it a few times,
Yeah.
especially when he's talking about humanity evolving towards a sixth race.
Yeah.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with theosophy, could you break down the basics?
Yeah, sure.
What is it?
So theosophy is this really fascinating blend of Eastern mysticism and Western esoteric traditions and philosophical inquiry. And one of its central concepts is this idea of root races.
Okay.
Think of it like this: humanity has gone through these different stages of evolution, and each root race represents this kind of distinct level of consciousness and development.
Okay, so where do we fit into all of this?
Right.
Which root race are we currently in?
So according to theosophy, we're currently in the 5th root race,
Okay.
but we're on the verge of transitioning to the 6th.
Interesting.
And the 6th race, as Vic briefly mentions, is believed to, possess this higher level of consciousness marked by unity, balance, and a more fluid understanding of gender.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big leap from where we are now.
Yeah.
What might this sixth race actually look like?
It's a good question.
What kind of changes might we see in the world and in ourselves?
Yeah, it is a great question, and it's definitely one that's, ripe for exploration.
Yeah.
But before we, delve into that and the potential future of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
let's maybe first take a closer look at Vic's perspective on the astral realm.
Yeah.
And, the potential pitfalls that he warns about.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that.
Yeah?
Let's unpack
Yeah.
that.
Right, let's do it.
So we're back. And before the break, we were talking about the potential dangers of the astral realm. And it sounds like Vic really wants people to understand that it's not all sunshine and rainbows out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the allure of astral projection and mediumship,
Yeah.
especially with all the popular books and shows and things these days.
Mm-hmm.
But Vic, drawing from his own experience, is really emphasizing that these practices can be risky
Yeah.
if you're not properly prepared.
So let's talk about that preparation. What kind of guidance would somebody need
Right.
before venturing into these realms? What are some things people should be aware of?
Well, I think first and foremost, finding a reputable teacher or mentor
Okay.
is going to be crucial. Someone with experience and a strong ethical foundation and a deep understanding of these subtle energies that are at play. Think of it like learning to scuba dive. You wouldn't just jump into the ocean without proper training, right?
Right. Because the ocean, while beautiful and awe-inspiring, can also be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
So are there any red flags that people should watch out for when seeking a teacher or mentor in this field?
Yeah, definitely be wary of anyone who promises quick fixes or guaranteed results.
Yeah.
Or claims to have all the answers.
Yeah.
Authentic spiritual development is a journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah, right.
And it often involves confronting our own shadows,
Yeah.
our own limitations.
So true. It's easy to get seduced by this idea of instant enlightenment.
Yeah.
But real growth takes time and effort and a willingness to face the less glamorous aspects of ourselves.
Totally.
What about discernment? How can someone develop the ability to discern between genuine guidance and potentially harmful influences?
Oh, that's such an important point. Developing discernment is essential, especially in a field where there's so much information and misinformation
Right.
swirling around. It's about learning to trust your intuition,
Yeah.
questioning everything,
Right.
and not being afraid to walk away from anything that feels off or manipulative.
And I think that connects back to Vic's point about the astral realm not being a fairyland.
Right.
It's He seems to be saying that there are forces out there, energies that can be deceptive or even harmful if you're not prepared to deal with them.
For sure, he's not trying to scare people away from exploring these realms,
Right.
but he's encouraging them to approach it with a healthy dose of caution and respect.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential dangers and the importance of finding guidance. But let's shift gears for a moment and go back to Vic's early experiences,
Yeah.
with those mysterious figures.
Right.
Do you think those encounters might have somehow, prepared him
Yeah.
for the challenges and insights he's gained throughout his spiritual journey?
That's a really interesting question. These early experiences can be so incredibly formative, especially when they challenge our conventional understanding of reality.
Right.
Perhaps these encounters planted a seed of curiosity, a sense that there's more to life than meets the eye.
And maybe that seed of curiosity eventually led him to explore, deeper spiritual concepts like
Mhm.
Dharma and Thelema and even theosophy.
Right. And it's through theosophy that we get this fascinating concept of root races,
Yeah.
which Vic mentions, in relation to humanity evolving towards a sixth race.
So we're currently in the fifth root race,
Yes.
but supposedly on the verge of transitioning to the sixth. What makes the sixth root race so special? How is it different from where we are now?
Well, according to theosophical teachings, the sixth root race will be characterized by a higher level of consciousness,
Okay.
marked by unity and balance and a more fluid understanding of gender. It's often described as a more enlightened state of being where harmony and cooperation kind of replace conflict and division.
That sounds pretty utopian, but I'm curious, how does this concept of a sixth root race connect to Vic's views on the role of chaos and suffering in evolution? It seems like those two ideas might be kind of at odds with each other.
That's a great observation, and that's where things get really interesting. Theosophy doesn't necessarily view evolution as a linear progression from bad to good.
Okay.
Instead, it recognizes that both harmony and discord, both love and strife, play essential roles in the grand scheme of things.
So it's not about eliminating chaos or suffering altogether,
Right.
but rather understanding their place in the larger evolutionary process.
Precisely. And this ties back to Vic's reference to those ancient Greek concepts of eros and eris.
Oh, right.
Eros representing love and creation, and eros representing strife and discord. They were believed to be these fundamental forces in the universe, constantly interacting and shaping reality as we know it.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these pieces kind of fit together. It's not about striving for some perfect, pain-free existence, but rather about embracing the complexities of life, the light and the shadow, the harmony and the discord, as all part of a grand evolutionary dance.
Exactly. And if Vic is correct, and we are indeed on the cusp of transitioning to this new era of consciousness, this understanding of the interplay between these opposing forces becomes even more crucial.
So if this sixth root race is supposedly characterized by greater unity and harmony, wouldn't that imply a lessening of chaos and suffering?
Yeah, that's a common assumption,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily how theosophy portrays it.
Okay.
Remember, evolution isn't about eliminating challenges altogether.
Right.
It's about how we respond to them.
Yeah.
So the sixth root race, they might not experience less chaos or suffering, but they might have a different relationship to it.
Okay, so maybe it's not about the absence of challenges,
Right.
but rather about our capacity to navigate them
Yeah.
with greater wisdom, compassion, and understanding.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the real message that Vic is trying to convey. It's not about seeking a utopia that's free from pain or conflict, but rather about cultivating the inner resources to meet life's challenges with grace and with courage and with this deep awareness of our interconnectedness.
That's a powerful message, and it definitely gives us a lot to ponder. But before we get too lost in the cosmic implications, let's bring it back down to Earth for a moment and talk about some practical steps people can take to navigate these complex realms safely and responsibly. Okay, so we've talked about a lot, from Vic's early paranormal experiences to the concept of a sixth root race and the potential dangers of the astral realm. But let's get practical.
Right.
If someone is listening and they're intrigued by these ideas and they want to explore further, where should they even start?
That's a really good question. And I think it's important to approach this with a sense of balance.
Right.
On the one hand, we have Vic's, kind of cautionary tales about the astral realm. It's not a playground, and dabbling without guidance can have consequences.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's a real thirst for spiritual exploration, these days. And shutting it down completely isn't the answer either.
So it's about finding that middle ground.
Yeah, I think so.
Honoring the mystery and the potential of the spiritual realm while also approaching it with respect and discernment.
For sure. And that's where finding a good teacher or mentor comes in.
Yeah.
Someone who can provide a solid foundation, teach ethical practices, and guide you through the potential pitfalls.
Okay, so let's say someone's ready to take that step. How do they even begin to find a reputable teacher or mentor in this field?
Right.
It's not like you can just Google, best astral projection teacher near me and expect reliable results.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It requires more than just like a quick internet search. I think, start by maybe tapping into your existing networks. Perhaps there are yoga studios, meditation centers, or like spiritual communities in your area that offer classes or workshops on these topics. Word of mouth can be incredibly valuable.
Right, okay. What about online resources? Are there any online communities or platforms that can help connect people with reputable teachers?
Yeah, there are definitely online resources available, but it's essential to approach them with caution. Do your research, read reviews, and really trust your intuition. Look for teachers who emphasize ethical practices and personal responsibility and, a gradual approach to spiritual development.
And be wary of anyone promising instant results or claiming to have all the answers.
Right, yeah.
That's a red flag in any field, but especially when you're dealing with something as nuanced and potentially powerful as spiritual exploration.
Totally. Remember, authentic spiritual growth is a journey. It's not a destination. It's about self-discovery, inner transformation, and connecting with something greater than ourselves. It's not about achieving supernatural powers or escaping the challenges of life.
Right, and I think it's important to remember that everyone's path is unique.
For sure.
Like what works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what resonates with you, what feels authentic and aligned with your values.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to end on. This deep dive has been all about exploring Vic's unique perspective on spiritual awakening and mediumship. And we've covered a lot of ground, but ultimately it's up to each individual to take what resonates with them and continue their own exploration.
Exactly. We've provided some food for thought, some potential pathways to consider, but the real journey begins within. So keep an open mind, trust your intuition, and never stop seeking.
Well said.
And on that note, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone.